Great. So thank you everybody for being here. If we haven't met, I am Maria Bernier, the State Data Coordinator, and I'm not sure that how often we'll get to meet in person. These webinars have been so helpful in reaching so many people across the state in a very efficient way. So you get to see me, but I never get to see you. So if we're ever out in public, please say hello and introduce yourself. That would be great. We are here today to talk about the 2022 Public Library Annual Report and how to complete that. If you have attended this similar webinar in a previous year, I will likely repeat much of what you heard in a previous year. I might talk about a few extra questions, but I am largely working from the exact same script. So some of this may sound familiar to you if you've done this before. And likewise, if you attended another webinar on updates to the annual report, some of this might also sound familiar. So today we are here to talk just about this report. We're going to cover some basics about where to find the report, how to move around it. Then we're going to look at some specific questions in the report that people often ask me about. So we'll dig into those a little bit. And I'd like to leave you with some important takeaways from my point of view. Hopefully you'll find them important as well. And then there's an evaluation form as well that I'll ask you to fill out. So let's start. Every time I do one of these reports, these webinars, I do like to remind people about the difference between the state annual report, which we're talking about today, and your own reports at your library. So our state report is data that I am collecting from every public library in Connecticut that I send to the Institute of Museum and Library Services for inclusion in their nationwide public library survey. So as a result, many of these questions that come to me from IMLS are static. They are fixed. I can't change them because every state across the country and many of the territories are asking their libraries those same questions. And we want to be able to compare things equitably across the entire country. So that's why we're asking the same questions. Takes a long time to change those questions, unless there's a pandemic and then stuff happens overnight and we end up with a whole new section of questions. But in general, it takes a long time to change these nationwide questions, particularly if it's related to something thorny like electronic resources and electronic circulation. And that's something that IMLS and the state data coordinators are going to be trying to work out over the next couple of years, is really to get those questions more in line with what libraries are actually doing. But it's going to be fiscal year 2024 by the time we actually are working on those questions and you're answering those questions. So it's going to be a ways down the road. Now, each state can add their own questions to the statewide survey, and we do that in Connecticut. We really do. And I can show you in the form, there's a column now that shows you which are Connecticut specific questions, which are US questions, nationwide questions from IMLS, and which are feeder questions that sort of feed into those IMLS questions that I need to submit. And often I will ask a little feeder question to get a little bit more granular detail so that I can give you back some really great reports on your statistics. So we'll see what those look like in the form. But this annual report is completely different from any report that you are compiling for your boards, for your stakeholders, your funders, the municipal finance board. You get to collect whatever data you want to give to them. And I encourage you to collect more data than you're giving me, because your library is doing so much more than what you are describing in your annual report to me. For instance, reference statistics are one question in the annual report, but they represent an enormous amount of work in your library. And you may have an entire reference department with lots of staff and its own desk, and they're doing incredible work. And you get to send it to me in like one lump sum number, which does not fairly represent all of the great impact that you're having in your community. So with many of the things that you do, go ahead and keep your own numbers, collect all of that, hang on to that and toot your horn, tell your funders about it, tell your board about it, let them know about the great things you're doing. It's really under your control, and it's your opportunity to tell your story in a really beautiful way. So that's the difference between the two types of reports. I always talk about that because it's still new to some people, so I keep mentioning it. Now let's talk about our dates and how all this works. So each year, the annual report covers a period from July 1st through June 30. It's kind of the state fiscal year, and it's the fiscal year of many of our public libraries. So that's the time period we're going to be looking at every year. And you're either counting things throughout the year, like all of the programs you're doing and your circulation, or you're counting as of June 30th, the end of the year, and that might be your holdings or your staff. So you're either, again, looking at a whole 12-month period or just kind of a snapshot in time. Those are your timeframes. Now, the deadline this year is November 1st. That's new, 4 o'clock on November 1st. I bumped it up a couple of weeks to give me more time to process all of your reports and get you back the data you need. So when everybody sends me a report, I look through it. You've probably heard from me in previous years with questions. And I look through everything and make sure that the numbers are consistent with what you've answered in the past, consistent with the large picture. And then I go ahead and copy all of your information into a big spreadsheet. And I manipulate that data, clean it up in various ways so that I can spit back out the annual statistical profile, which is that huge spreadsheet of all the answers. But that's really only one tool. I also create lots of chart and report creators and some advocacy flyers and a couple other really nifty tools that you can use to help advocate for your library during funding season. And even in like early to mid-December, libraries are contacting me and really kind of antsy to get their numbers back and to get those chart and report creators back. So in order to get the tools to you guys in a timely fashion, I need to be getting your data a little bit earlier so that I've got time to do all of the crunching and the cleanup and the manipulation on my end in order to get it to you. So that's the reason for our new deadline. And I want to point out this link right here. I'm going to send you this link at about 1 o'clock today. It'll be in an email from Middletown Library Service Center. It'll be this link to where you can find the annual report on our LibGuides. So we are going to just hop right over there if I can find it. We're going to pop over to this LibGuide. This is what it'll look like when you land on the annual report page. So if you're familiar with LibGuides, they're really detailed. We've made them very detailed at DLD. This is a really rich resource of information all about statistics. So if you ever need to find statistics, it's under services. And this menu at the top appears on every single guide, every single page. Statistics are under services. You'll just pull down to library statistics. That will get you to this guide. Another option is if we're on our DLD homepage, which looks like this, you can find library statistics in our link cloud. It's up here on the left, library statistics. And then if you're stuck, let's see what happens if we do a keyword search, if I can type it. This search box appears also at the top of every single page. So let's just go right there to the annual report. So in our statistics LibGuide, we've got multiple tabs up here, lots of tabs, and those are each different pages within the guide. And then you'll see we also have tabs within boxes. So there's layers of information in here, and I encourage you just to click around. It's a website, you're not going to break anything, just click and see what happens. If you get lost, use the search box, but navigate around. But in our statistics LibGuide, if you come back, this statistical profile tab over here on the far left is where that huge spreadsheet of information is every single year. Tons of great stuff in there. I have an entirely different webinar on how to use all of that stuff. Likewise, our chart and report creators here. That's another webinar, but this is really gold in terms of advocating because the charts are already made for you. So you can either compare your library against others or compare your library over time, see your trends. So those are very cool. There's some additional data visualization tools. This is basically using the same data, but displaying it in a tool called Tableau. So that's an online visualization versus something Excel based. Now we've got some stats on the web. and our flyers and resources for advocacy over here. So spend some time, come back when you have a little time to poke around, dig through there, see everything that's there. But today we're going to focus on the annual report tab, which is this second one right here. And if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see there's a lot of information here in these additional tabs. What we're looking at today is the 2022 annual report right here. If you're curious about changes to this report, you can take a look there. I did some webinars about those changes back in June. Hopefully you got a chance to see those. But if you didn't, there are recordings. There's always a recording. You can take a look at those. There's a tab here about programs because those became so complex in the past couple of years when IMLS really branched out their program questions and got really detailed about whether it's in person or online. Is it synchronous or asynchronous, and what ages is it? So there's a lot of information now about programs and activities, and that's all on that little tab right there. We used to have something called state aid that ran out in 2016 when the legislature cut our budget. That was a nice little grant that each library got that nobody's getting anymore, but we still have it there for historical purposes. And you can find last year's reports in here or contact information for me. So let's focus today on the 2022 annual report tab. As we scroll down, here's some basic information about the report with a reminder of our new deadline, where all this comes together. There's some information here about how to complete the form, how to find the questions and instructions. There's always a video. There's lots of great info, reminder of the deadline and my contact information, both right here, right in the center of the page, as well as on the right-hand side. And my contact info is pretty much everywhere, right? Like I want you to be able to find me, so I make it easy for you to find me. As we scroll down, this data playlist, let me pop that up. Data playlist, this is where our recording from today will end up. So you can always find our playlist, hop over there and either watch today's recording or maybe watch one from another day. That might be fun too. These slides right here are what I showed you to start with. It's 4 or 5 slides, so it's not really detailed, but they're here if you would like to take another look at them to refresh yourself. And as we scroll down a little further, here's some great resources. Another short video on how to use the form. We're going to cover a lot of that information today, but it's here in an 8-minute format if you'd like to watch that as well. Here, right here in this sort of little X green icon, this is the actual Excel file for the annual report. We're going to open that up in a minute and take a look at that. And as we scroll down, here are some PDFs with just a list of the questions. So if you wanted to just print the list and take a look at it and make it easy, that's available to you. All of the instructions and definitions are right here. Again, easy to print off and refer to. I like to download that and do a keyword search through that because sometimes you can't remember where in the 7 or 8 pages you saw that definition. So a nice little Control F keyword search in your PDF is helpful. This guide for completing the annual report is basically a textual explanation of this 8-minute video. So if you like to learn by watching, there's a video. If you like to learn by reading, there's a guide, all the same info. And then there's additional PDFs on some library stats and definitions. And if you were interested, a checklist of statistics you could keep year round. So probably more than you wanted to hear about today. We're really going to talk about the annual report. And you just click on it, go ahead and download it to your computer and open the file. I already pulled it up earlier today and enabled what do you have to do? You have to enable editing, I think it is. So make sure you do that. And then make sure that you save this. Oh, what happened there? Did I stop sharing? Sorry, everybody. I think I stopped sharing. 1 minute, please. Let me let somebody into the room. Gonna go ahead and share our screen. Great. So you should be seeing our Excel spreadsheet right there in front of you. Please drop me a note in the chat if you are not seeing the spreadsheet. But this is what it looks like. And it should actually open up on the instructions and definitions. That's usually where it opens up. right on this first page. You can see at the bottom, we've got instructions in one tab. We have the survey itself in a separate tab. And then if your library has branches, we've got that in another tab. So those are the 3 sheets you'll be working with. And it comes up on the instructions and definitions. There's always something new to talk about, and that's the very first paragraph, a reminder right in red about the new deadline and information about new questions for the children's age groups. So this is a little refresher you'll want to take a look at, see what's in there. It's a good thing to check every year before you start working on your survey, because some things do change. And some instructions to read before you begin. I often get questions from people that could be answered if they read this part. So hint, 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 please read this before you begin about the deadline, some of the pre-filled answers that can't be changed. Great tips. If you're finding the type size too small, there's a little zoom way down here at the very bottom of your Excel screen. You can kind of zoom in and make it larger. So now we're at 110% or even 120%. So it just makes it a little bit more legible on your screen. That's really helpful for those of us with older eyes or maybe working on a tiny screen. So you can zoom in or out depending on how you like to do things. There's a lot of definitions, reminder about the fiscal year period and what that covers. And as we scroll down, as I mentioned, there's 7 or 8 pages of definitions here. You can also use a Control F to find specific keywords in here. So if you were curious about where you might put your ARPA grant, you could just do a keyword search for ARPA, and you would come up here where you're going to put it in question 8.6. It'll add up with all of your federal income. So that's where you'll put your ARPA money. And that's a great way to use the instructions and definitions page. Okay, let me see what else I want to tell you while we're here. I think that was it for instructions and definitions. So let's hop over to the survey. And here I want to kind of point out this. Oh, my screen share is not working. Thank you, Kevin, for pointing that out. I am glad somebody actually said that. All right, let me stop the share. Okay, let me put my chat back on. Great, so you should be seeing now the survey. You should be seeing questions. You should be seeing on the left question numbers and question descriptions and an answers column. If you are not seeing that, please let me know that. And if you find that this ribbon is taking up too much space, you can collapse that ribbon. So in my, still not working for Kevin. Okay. Can anyone else please let me know if the share is working or not working? Okay. I'm seeing messages that the Justice can see it. Okay. Thank you. So if you're not seeing my screen, you might want to, I don't know how to do it. If you're not seeing my screen, you might want to mess around with your Zoom settings and make sure that you are seeing this full screen on your computer. That may be the way to approach it. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you letting me know in the chat what's going on. So if you're not seeing the full screen, go ahead and in your Zoom, make sure that you've maximized it so you can see it on your computer screen. Awesome. Okay, thanks, guys. It takes a team. It takes a whole village to do this stuff. So I think I was saying, if you find this ribbon to be annoying, you can collapse it and just click on this little caret. And because we're using our my family's sort of personal Microsoft Office settings, this looks a little bit different on your professional version in the Office. It'll just be a little caret that you sort of click up and down. But here it's this little caret, and we're going to show the tabs instead of showing the ribbon. So if it'll do that, show the tabs only, that just gives us a little more space here. Some people find it annoying. I find it annoying sometimes. Let's see, I would like to point out while we are here, all of the columns that are available to us. First, this very first column on the left where it says USCT, that's how you know whether this is a national question that we're submitting to IMLS, and those are the ones that have US in front of them. It could be a feeder question. F was the best thing that I could kind of come up with as a 1 or 2 letter abbreviation to indicate that it feeds into a national question. It's sort of a more granular thing that I add up to get to a total to send to IMLS. And then CT is obviously a Connecticut specific question. Those are the ones that I have control over. And you may remember in the spring, I sent around a survey and we actually got rid of a few questions, and I have added a few new local questions since then. So you'll see the CT in here. Our next column is always the question number, and then our questions, and then the answers column. That's right here. This next column is answer needed. So this is a really easy way for you to visually scroll through the document and see which questions you have not yet answered, because it's going to show up in red here as answer needed. Also, people will email me and say, I'm trying to type in the form and it's giving me this error message that the cell that I'm trying to type in is on a protected sheet. I need the password. And I usually write back and say, you're trying to type in the wrong column. So don't type in the answer needed column. You're actually going to type in the answers column with these great big boxes. So make sure that you're typing in the correct spaces, not in a locked cell. So make sure you're there. As we scroll across, you can see that there's a column for last year's answers, as well as 2 years ago answers. So you actually have a lot of data in here. I'm going to go ahead and select a library so you can see how that column changes. I'm going to pick Hartford because they have so many branches and they have a bookmobile and they're interesting. So you see how immediately their data filled in from last year and 2 years ago. So you can just see that context and see if you're in the range. Sometimes libraries will send me numbers that are completely different from anything that they did in the past 2 years. It's either much higher or much lower than they did in the past 2 years. And so I'll follow up and say, did you really mean to tell me that number? You know, did your collection really shrink that much? Or did you really do that thing? So this is another way you can check your answers, is just to see, is this number consistent with what we answered in the past couple of years? And there's also a column here for your notes. This is up to you. This is a great way to leave some breadcrumbs for yourself for next year, or for your future self or a future director. Put some notes in there about how you got to this answer, because you may have said, oh, I had to ask these three people to find that data. Or you might say, I added this and this and this in my spreadsheet to get to this answer. So just leave yourself some help for the future. When you send me your final report form, that column will be in there. I'm not going to look at it really. I don't much care what your notes are unless you ask me to look at them, but it's a guide for you. You can actually print this off. It is formatted right now to print, I think, landscape and legal size, so that we're capturing all of those columns. So if you wanted to create a printed record of your annual report, you would have all of that information. You could put it in a binder or put it in a folder and just refer to it next year and have all those great breadcrumbs in there. So those tools are there in the sheet for you, available. And because it's a Microsoft Office product, if you don't want to have it printed on a legal size landscape, you can just reset your print settings to have it print on letter size, portrait, however you want to do it. You can play with the print settings. You should be able to do that. All right, what else do I want to tell you? Let's start looking at how you answer questions. As I scroll up, you'll see that some of these answers are pre-filled because they're pretty much the same from year to year. Your street address doesn't usually change. Sometimes it does. Likewise, phone numbers don't usually change. If your director changes, just go ahead and type in a new person. That's all right. Let me put myself in there. You can go ahead and change things that are in the white answer cells. That's okay. And as we scroll down, there are a lot of pop-up comments. So you'll see this tiny, tiny little red triangle in the upper right corner indicates that there is an additional pop-up box or a detail for this question. So if you just hover over that question, that extra information will pop up and you can read it's an explanation or a definition or further clarification for that question. So you'll see here about how we count the number of branch libraries or square feet. All of those little tools are right there in the spreadsheet for you. And then many of these questions have controlled vocabulary answers. So you'll see how it says choose from the drop-down menu to select your answer for this question. And we can only select yes, no, or maybe. If we try to put something else in there, we're going to get that error note. Okay, so let's just cancel. We'll say, yes, let me pick from the controlled vocabulary. That helps me streamline my data cleanup process where everybody's using the same yeses, the same nos, the same maybes. And so there's consistent controlled vocabulary, and we as librarians are comfortable with that and familiar with that. So there are some questions like that where you have specific answers. Now I want to scroll down to a new question so you can see what that looks like. Here, question 2.9, which is a Connecticut specific question. This was new. I just added it to the annual report this year, and this was to replace a couple of other questions that I got rid of. But the new question you can see right here, right at the beginning of the question, is that it is new. Sometimes if I have changed a question or edited a question, I'll make a note as well. But that's, again, an easy way for your eye to catch those new questions and say, aha, this is something that I haven't answered previously. It might take me an extra minute to find the answer for that. I might have to go ask somebody about that. So just keep an eye out for the new questions and you'll see, why am I still getting choose from drop-down menu? You'll see here a little bit of extra information about what it means to be SEPA compliant and all of those criteria. So if you have any questions, follow up with me there. And again, this is a controlled vocabulary, yes or no question. Great. Okay, what else do I want to tell you while we're here? The blue boxes. So these blue shaded boxes indicate that there is a formula. There is usually a sum where it's adding some fields elsewhere. And if I click in this, and then if we look at the formula bar right up here, you can actually see which cells it's supposed to be adding. So this number, total number of synchronous programs, should be adding all of the numbers in these three boxes above it to get this total. So if something happens with a blue shaded box, let me know. There's just a little mess up with the formula and I can fix that on my end once you have submitted your report. But in general, you can't change those. If you try to type in those, it's going to give you an error message. So don't try to change those. All right, so let's actually talk about, oops, sorry, now I made it all go away. Let's actually talk about some specific questions. The questions about your director. We have had a lot of changes in directors over the past years. So in your form, please give me the name and contact information for the person who is your director or acting director as of the date this report is submitted. So who is your director of record when you send this to me? I know there's a lot of fluctuation happening in many spaces, but just give me your current information about who that is. Now, question 1.12, square feet of your library. This is actually all of the square footage that is enclosed by your exterior walls. So it can include your cellar, your attic, spaces where you're not necessarily letting your patrons go. Go ahead and count all the square feet of your library building, because if your library applies for E-rate funding or sometimes other federal funding, that extra square footage matters. So go ahead and recount if you need to, but make sure that you're getting all the area on all floors enclosed by the outer walls, and that's occupied by the library. Add that up. All right, let's scroll down to question 1.32, which is tell us something your library did this fiscal year that you're proud of. This is a question I added, I think last year, that I stole from a few other states because it was so successful for them. But it's been really fun to hear from every library about things that they actually did and feel accomplished and feel happy about and feel proud about. And then we're using that information to help you toot your horn as well. So this may show up in press releases about data, about trends in public libraries, could show up somewhere in our social media. In fact, it's done that recently with a couple of libraries who sent their reports in early. So go ahead and tell us something you're proud of. And if you want to send pictures, go ahead and just attach those to the email when you send me your report. Those are very cool. Okay, we're going to hop down to section 2, library services. For question 2.1, your annual public service hours. Here again, you'll be counting only the hours when your building is open to the public. So, when your posted hours are, you're open maybe 10 to 6. Those are your hours of operation. Even though staff may be in the building from 9 until 10, you're just not going to count that hour. So it's the hours when your building is open to the public. And likewise, in question 2.2, the number of weeks your building was open to the public. I think in this year, we didn't have many COVID closures. So most libraries will answer that they were open for 52 weeks, the full year. This is, again, buildings open, people are coming in. Occasionally, this number is 50 or 51. Say you had a water leak and you had to close for a week or so to clean up, then you might go down to 51 weeks out of the year. Another question to take a look at is total annual library visits for the year. This is all the people who are actually coming into your building. So this does not include curbside service or external service, outdoor service, none of that. So it's just people who are crossing your threshold, opening your door, walking into your building, who would get counted by your people counter. So those are your total annual library visits. And as we scroll down to 2.6, the total registered resident library users. Whew. So that's your number of library card holders who live in town as of June 30th. So it's that snapshot in time. And make sure that you're not counting any expired cards. So this very next question is, when do your cards expire? It could be 2 years, it could be 3 years, 4 or 5, but usually you've got some expiration date. If a new patron comes in, you say, great, your card is good for 3 years. Come back in 3 years and we'll just renew it for you. So make sure that when you're counting your total card holders, you're not including those expired people. They're not your current card holders. So just make sure you're giving me that number. There are some libraries that send me suspiciously high numbers of card holders, like 99 or 100% of their population. So I will often ask you to follow up on that and ask you for more clarification and say, hey, make sure that you're not including expired cards. Please try to give me an accurate count of your card holders. All right, let's scroll down to question 2.13, which is about the number of Wi-Fi sessions on your network. More libraries are starting to report this number because they've got either a tool that will help them do it or software that will help them count this. This is a really important metric going forward. It was important before the pandemic, but then it became super important, right? Like while the buildings were closed and people were not able to come in or not comfortable coming in, many patrons were using outdoor Wi-Fi and accessing the internet that way. And that became a huge service that libraries were offering to their patrons. And that's something you want to be able to count and be able to report on to your stakeholders, to be able to say, well, we helped this many people who accessed our internet outside the library. So please do whatever you can, whether it's software, whether it's a service, some way of capturing the number of Wi-Fi sessions in your library, because that's really important going forward. Now, when we talk about reference transactions here in question 2.14, remember how I mentioned there's only one space here where you get to talk about all of your reference transactions. This is it, question 2.14. And remember that this question is not specific to any platform or any means of communication. So make sure that you're counting not just the people you're talking to face to face, but also the people you're helping over the telephone, over email and text and chat, over social media, all of those means of communication. If it's a reference transaction, make sure that you are counting it and adding it to your annual report. All right, branch and bookmobile questions are right here. And let's see what happens if I click on that. Good, hop me over to the branches page. And as I mentioned, Hartford is interesting because they have a bookmobile. So if you're one of the 5 libraries that does have a bookmobile, go ahead and fill in those questions. And then as we scroll down, there's information about each specific branch, and there's just brief information about those branches. So if you've got a branch location or 2 or more, make sure that you're filling in the branches sheet. And when you're done, you just return to the original survey, and we'll hop right back here. So that's how you would get to those branch questions. All right, I'm keeping an eye on the chat. Great. As I mentioned, if you think of anything, drop it in the chat. I'll keep an eye as we go along. Another thing I want to point out is all of these programs questions. So thank you, IMLS. So now we are really getting detailed about age ranges, as well as how and where the program is offered, and whether it's a program versus an activity. So that's why I put together that program and activity spreadsheet. It's a whole separate Excel tool that you can use across your library to help you keep track of these things throughout the year. If you're not using that spreadsheet, I strongly recommend that you investigate it and that you roll it out in your library, because it makes this portion of the annual report much easier to fill out because you've been capturing the data every month as you go along. Now, I tried to match up the look of this section in the annual report with the look of the program and activity spreadsheet. So if you have them side by side on a screen, if you've got a nice big screen that's generously sized, and you can do that. In the programs spreadsheet, the children ages 0 to 5 has a pink banner, just like this does. And if you are in the program spreadsheet, the area for children ages 6 to 11 has an orange banner, like this does. So that, I'm hoping, will help it make it easier to transfer the numbers. And then I added a little bit of shading this year to try to make it easier to spot the difference between the number of programs in the paler gray and the attendance at those programs in the slightly darker gray. So that's another kind of visual cue that hopefully will help you get the numbers in the right place. But this is largely formatting to help you out. But all of these numbers go here. I have lots of other webinars talking about what's a program, what's an asynchronous program versus a synchronous program versus an in-person on-site program. So if you're curious about those, let me know. I can send you the links for all of those webinars as well. But the programs go on and on and on and on and on and on. So it's here. I appreciate your cooperation with getting these numbers and sending them to IMLS, because this is actually a very cool story. And this is something that IMLS has been noticing, and we've all been noticing, obviously, right? Like, programs are the big star. People aren't necessarily checking out books anymore, but they are coming for programs, and programs were booming before the pandemic, and they were continuing throughout the pandemic. So this is really a great measure of community impact and inclusion in your area. So that's why we're really interested in programs across the country. Attendance, you guys all know you're counting attendance for the program. So if the program is geared toward little ones, ages 2 to 3, say it's a story time, you're going to count as attendance all the people who come to that program. So all the little ones and their adult caregivers, those all show up as attendance. So you did one story time for the little ones, and there were maybe 26 people there. All of those count as attendance. So you're counting attendance based on the age of the program target audience, not based on the age of the people who show up. Okay, so it's one program for the little ones and 26 attendance at the program for the little ones. So the program and activity spreadsheet helps you keep that clear. I do want to point out these intergenerational programs here. It's all other programs, not counted above, other miscellaneous, but these are intergenerational or family programs or all ages programs like chess club, classic intergenerational, where you might get teens as well as retirees, as well as people who just love chess who are in their 40s, right? Wonderful intergenerational program. Or you might be showing a G movie and an entire family comes. So parents, kids, maybe grandparents come too. That's a great family program. So you would count those in all other programs not counted above. So intergenerational ones. Let me see. Here's some of these blue boxes. Remember how I said those are formulas and those will total up for you. So this is a great way. You can see these are all of the US questions over on the left. These are all of the questions that IMLS really wants. But in order to get to these numbers, I have to ask you all those others. And then I can feed you back great information about all the programs that you're doing in your library to really show your impact. So that's where the totals end up. And we also ask about self-directed activities in Connecticut. So this might be those fabulous take and makes that you've been offering. This could be a story walk, something like that as a self-directed activity. So make sure you're counting all of those as well. Okay, that's programs. Let's head on down to collections. This is where you're counting your holdings. So the size of your collection, basically as of June 30th. And here's a reminder, this box right at the top of collections, you'll notice that often a section within the annual report has some instructions at the top of this section. So just take a look there as a reminder. Okay, what am I counting? What's my time frame? How do I do this? A reminder here, don't count stuff that you borrowed from the service center. I'm going to have to take the swap out of there now since CLC isn't offering the swaps anymore, but you're only counting the materials that your library purchased for your patrons, released or licensed or whichever. Let's see, in section 3 about collections, I want to tell you about question 3.18, which is about your local databases and electronic collections. So right above here is some information about what that means. What are licensed databases? What are electronic collections? What do we mean by that? And here you're going to put in the number of databases and electronic collections that you specifically provide in your library or through your consortium for your patrons. So this includes things like your newspapers and your consumer reports, can also include all of those Freeding and Freels and Hooplas and Indie Flixes. You'll count those in here as well. So that number can go up, has been going up with the pandemic as libraries are adding those additional electronic collections for their patrons to borrow from. And we'll scroll down to question 3.21. This is about the number of successful retrievals from your databases. So if you're able to count this, please go ahead and report that. This is, as it says here, there's a long description of what all that means, but each database is a little bit different about what you count and how you count it and how you get those numbers. So if you can get them, please send them to me. And if you figure out how to do it, keep notes for yourself so that next year when you go to get this number, hopefully your vendors will still call it the same thing and you'll still be able to compile the same sum number to get here. Okay, we're going to scroll down to section 4, which is about circulation. And this is circulation for the entire fiscal year. So July 1 through June 30, that's a reminder. Make sure you're counting each initial checkout as well as each renewal. So there are these reminders up here at the top. I want to tell you about circulation, about streamed and downloaded songs, which go into question 4.34. It's a little esoteric, but if you have some downloadable or streamable audio and it counts individual songs, you don't know if that's a grown-up song or a kid song. It's just an other song, right? You go ahead and count those in 4.34. Those are downloadable and streamable songs. And that number can be big, right? If you've got some music lovers in town who might be listening to a lot of songs, that I've seen that number be in the 4 and even 5 digits. So that's kind of fun. Now, I also want to talk about the Simply E and Palace checkouts. If your library is participating in Palace and you've had some checkouts prior to June 30th, please go ahead and put those in question 4.40A. We're in this transition from Simply E still to Palace, and things have gone over to Palace, but your stats may have branched a couple of different platforms. So please grab those if you can. My coworker, Brad Bullis, is brilliant about getting the stats out of Palace, and he can absolutely help you with that if you need it. But that's where those checkouts will go. And hopefully we will be having more of those as we go forward. Right now, Palace doesn't separate them by format. It's basically all material checkouts. What we're hoping to move toward is that you can at some point figure out how many ebooks there were from Palace and how many downloadable audio there were from Palace. We're hoping to get a little more granular there. Yay, I see a question in the chat. If you have a branch library, should you be adding your numbers for both buildings together for circulation and programs? Yes, absolutely. Yep, there is no separate area for branch stats. So if you have a library system with multiple locations, you're going to smush all of that information into this one survey sheet. So that's where it becomes a little trickier if you have multiple locations. So yes, all of your circulation will go on the survey, all of your library visitation, all of your holdings, all of the money is going to go on this one survey sheet. The branches sheet, oh my gosh, really has very few questions. It's about square feet, total annual public service hours, number of weeks it's open, and then a couple of COVID questions. So that's very brief information just about sort of the physical accessibility of those branches, but all of their services and all of their functionality gets brought into the survey. So good question. All right, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me scroll down to ILLs. So here's a reminder again, what's an ILL? What is an interlibrary loan transaction? Loan between libraries. So make sure that you're not including anything you borrowed from the service center again. Also make sure you're not including any of those borrow it loans. And remember, a borrow it loan is when an individual person comes to your library to borrow an item that's on the shelf. So that's a loan to a person. It's not an interlibrary loan between libraries. So make sure that you report your borrow it loans on a separate report to me in March, and that you're reporting your interlibrary loans here in the annual report. And if your consortium does allow patron placed holds, so you let your patrons request materials from other libraries within the consortium and they're sent to your library, for the purposes of the annual report, that counts as an ILL transaction. So make sure that you're adding those right in here. And I think there's a little pop-up here that gives you a little bit more information about what that ILL is. So lots of info there. Let's scroll down now to staff. This staffing section is one of the more frequently used sections in the statistical profile. So as libraries are looking at their staffing needs and maybe trying to advocate for more staff or more funding for salaries and personnel, they will often use this section. So it's really crucial data. And I appreciate everybody who sends it to me because it's been very, very helpful. So as you're filling in your staff, please give me the best details you can. I also want to point out here this very first question about volunteers and volunteer hours. That includes all your volunteers, including friends and board members, because presumably you are not paying your friends and your board members. They are volunteering for your library. So make sure you're including hours from all of the people potentially who help your library through their own service and through their own hours. So be thoughtful about who you're including as your volunteers, because it's probably a longer list than you're thinking of. Let's scroll down now to the current salary range. This right here is the one section in the report that has a slightly different time frame. So this will be the current salary as of the time you're filling it out, which is actually fiscal year 2023. So the year we're in right now, just let me know these salaries or salary ranges for the current year we're in. So just make sure you're keeping an eye on what current means in this sense. And these numbers are actually super helpful. Again, I usually will translate them to an hourly number so that we can start comparing apples and apples as we go through, but just give me whichever information you have for those ranges. Now, sometimes a library will contact me, say with a question about reference and adult services. And they'll say, well, do you want the department director for reference and adult services, or do you want the salary for like a new reference librarian? And I'll usually say, well, look at the data you gave me for the past 2 years. Is that the salary for a new reference librarian, or is that the salary for your department head? So that's a question I often throw back to you guys. So this is, again, a place where it's nice to keep some notes for yourself about what you're reporting. Maybe this is where you end up with a range for entry level all the way up to department head, but give me some consistent information from year to year, right? We're looking for consistency and we're looking for accuracy. So leave yourself some breadcrumbs there. We will scroll down to section 6, which was the COVID questions for the past couple of years. And those are still here for the hopefully final year. We've whittled away a few of them, so there are fewer COVID questions. But I'm branching this over to sort of a social justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility section. So many of the COVID questions, I'm hoping to adapt a little bit when IMLS no longer requires them, because they're really wonderful indicators of how you have made your services accessible because of the pandemic. So for instance, allowing users to complete registration for library cards online without having to come to the library. Wonderful way of reaching out to more patrons and making your digital services a little bit more accessible. So that question will probably stick around in future years as a Connecticut specific question. But this section 6 is going to transition to that kind of emphasis as we go forward. And I relocated a few questions here. I think the fines questions that used to be in section 7 maybe are now in section 6. So if something is missing, it's probably still here. It's just in a different spot. So you might have to look around for it a little bit. But I did try to map those questions. Let me see. Here they are. Your overdue fines for books and your overdue fines for DVDs. And I did try to map those to what you answered in the past couple of years. So those should come out correctly. Let's see, what else I want to tell you for section 6. Not sure, there are these pop-ups, so make sure you're reading all your pop-ups as you go. Some of these questions are optional about curbside service. And this question is new about whether your library has an equity, diversity, and inclusion plan. That's just a quick yes, no. So a lot of these new questions are fairly quick yes, no's. 6.16 is a new question from IMLS about whether your library charges overdue fines for print materials for anybody. So that's a yes, no. All right, moving down to income and expenses. Sections 7 and 8 are about your income Section 9 is about your expenses. And make sure you're counting income in the year in which you received it. So not just when somebody said, yeah, we'll get that to you, but the year in which you actually received it. And likewise, your expenses, you'll count in the year in which you actually spent them. So not when you said, oh yeah, we're planning ahead for 2 years from now, we're going to spend that money, but did you actually spend it this year between July 1st and June 30? Those are the time periods you're counting. The income should be pretty straightforward. I don't think anything has changed here in section 7. If you've got finance people or a bookkeeper or town finance people, they should be helping you with these questions. They should be able to get you these answers pretty expediently because these are not hard questions for them. Likewise, other operating income, your federal government income. There were a lot of LSTA grants this year for the summer enrichment grant. So if your library got one of those, make sure you're filling it in LSTA grant. Likewise, if you did not report your ARPA grant last year, then you'll need to report it this year as all other federal sources. And just identify the sources right here. It was an ARPA grant or an LSTA grant. Let us know that. Your borrow at reimbursement will fill in automatically. If you had any other state grants, maybe you got a grant from the State Historic Preservation Office or some other state source, you'll go ahead and put it here. And there's a lot of their fundraising that happens here. So let's talk about Friends. There's a couple of ways that the Friends can pay for things, right? If you have library friends, and hopefully you do, capital F Friends group, they might be having a book sale and making money. And they might say, we had such a fabulous sale. We're giving you $5,000 that we raised for the sale. And you say, yes, thank you, friends. That's a fabulous donation. That donation will go here in question 8.12 as a monetary financial donation from your friends to the library. Now, one other paradigm is that your friends will just pay for stuff for you, right? Like the bill just gets sent to them, you never see it. That might happen in the case of a specific database or a specific service where the bill literally gets sent to the friend's name and treasurer and address, and the friends cut a check from their bank account, and you never actually see the money in your library bank account. If that's the case, there's a special place where that goes all the way down here in question 9.17. So if any library services or operations were paid for directly by the friends or another group, and that money was not added to your operating budget, you're going to account for it here. So that's just another way of saying, yeah, the friends helped us out. The money didn't come in our bank account, but we absolutely benefited from their donation, from their purchase. So those are the two different ways of counting friends' income. Now I'm going to also show you capital expenditures. So when we hover over capital expenses, you see that little pop-up. And what we're talking about with the annual report is really major expenses, right? So acquiring a property to build on, building a new building, adding or renovating your building, buying furnishing for your new building, something substantial like that counts as a capital expenditure for the purposes of this annual report. I know that many libraries will think of furniture as a capital purchase. And for the purposes of this report, that's just going to go into your regular library operating expenses. So you may have to do a little finagling with what we think of as capital income and expenses and what you think of as capital income and expenses. So just be aware of that. What else do I want to tell you? Oh, sorry. 9.10 right here, computer, hardware, software, systems, and telecommunications. That's where you'll put things like Constant Contact and Envisionware and website management. That all kind of comes here in this sort of techie, computery kind of question in terms of expenses. So lump it all in there. And then if you're completely stuck about where to put an operating expense, just throw it in other, right? 9.13, that's other. there's definitely a space here for that. Let's see. Oh, we are almost done. Question 10.5. We're at the final section, section 10. This is information about who completed your report. And the very last question, do you certify that the library director has seen this report in its entirety and confirms that it's accurate and complete to the best of their knowledge? This again is a yes, no question. If you send me no, I'm going to say, I can't accept that report. And I'm going to send it back to you and say, please make sure that your library director sees this report in its entirety and certifies its accuracy. So this answer does need to be yes in order for your report to be complete and to be accepted. So make sure that you are saying yes there. Now this is handy. This yellow box will tell you how many questions you have not yet answered. So that's a great way to check as you're going through that you've answered everything you need to answer. And as we scroll down, there's another reminder for your branch questions. Here's my email address if you need it. But there's also a comment box here. So if something was wonky with one of your question cells, or you want to send me more information about something, a special circumstance at your library, please put it into the comment box right here at the bottom. And that keeps it intact with your annual survey. So I have it all in one place. And then I usually transfer that information or act upon it if I need to fix one of the locked cells or something like that, or formulas. So I will usually fix that for you. Okay, that is what I wanted to show you in the form itself. So I am going to hop back to our LibGuide. So remember, here's our LibGuide. Here's where you're going to find that report. And I want to go back to our slides because I had just a little bit of advice to share with you. These are my important takeaways that I hope to give you with. And primarily is please don't wait until the last minute, because now we're still only 4 weeks out. So with the new deadline, we're about 4.5 weeks away from that. I encourage you, if you haven't started, this would be the time to start, because it can take some time to pull together all of the numbers. Although a lot of them you have hopefully been tracking from month to month and reporting to your library board, because you can report to them about your CERC and your program stats every single month. So hopefully a lot of that you have. Also, as a reminder, use that notes column way over on the far right in the form to describe to yourself how you calculated that number, because that's going to make it easier for yourself next year, or easier for whoever comes after you to fill out the form. Also, please strive for both consistency and accuracy from year to year. So by accuracy, I mean, please read the questions. Not everybody does. So please start by reading the questions and trying to understand what it is they're asking. If it's not clear to you what that question is about, please get in touch with me. Everybody does, right? Do not feel bad about asking me questions or getting in touch, because that's my job, is to help you guys figure this out. So please strive for an accurate understanding of what the question is asking for, and an accurate answer in terms of what we're looking for. So if we're asking about circulation, please provide an accurate answer about your CERC, your holdings, your ILL, all of that, and then try to be consistent from year to year. So if you're counting things differently every single year, and the numbers you send me are completely out of whack every single year, that doesn't do you guys any good. It doesn't provide you any kind of consistency in terms of your charts and your trends. Because in the chart and report creators, I have trends from the past, I think it's at least 10 years and then 26 years. And you can actually see in there what's going on. And you can see when things are going up, you can see when things are going down. You can see when a new director starts, because the trends will often all reset themselves in the same way. So please answer each question the same way this year as you answered it last year and the year before, so that we're getting consistent data for your library over the course of the years. We want to be able to tell an accurate and consistent picture and story of what's been happening. Oh, look, track your stats each month where possible. There's the next bullet point. Yeah, if you can keep track of those every month, why not do it? And then your spreadsheet just totals them up at the end of the year, and you transfer that number to the annual report. Makes it easier. If you have people, if you have staff, if you have volunteers, if you have board members, please distribute the workload as much as you can. So your finance people should be helping you with the numbers things. Circ staff can hopefully help you with circulation. Tech services should be able to help you with the holdings. Program people, that often crosses multiple departments. So make sure everybody's helping you with this as a director, because it is a lot to put together. All right, and when you get stuck, there is a lot of information already in the form. So remember, there's all of those definitions and instructions on the very first page. And then there's all of those pop-up boxes with more information. So make sure that you're checking all of those places, because often the answer is in there. I've tried to predict based on questions I've gotten what people are going to ask, and I try to give you the answers so they're right there and you don't need me. I'm here if you do need me, but often the answer is there for you. And a reminder that the final data is only as good as what I get, right? So thinking back to, again, those chart and report creators, I'm just feeding you back the data you send me. I am not tweaking your data. I'm not enhancing your data. I'm giving you the numbers back that you gave me. So if the numbers are weird, it's because somebody gave me weird numbers. So please, accuracy and consistency, that's the way to go. And whoops, one final slide. Here's my contact info. Here's our evaluation form. I don't know if I can copy that into the chat. I think I can grab it here. You will be getting an email at about 1 o'clock today. Yeah, not going to let me. With a link, as I mentioned, to the annual report page and a link to the evaluation form. I actually appreciate getting the evaluations from everybody to hear what part of this was helpful and what part was not. And that helps me improve my presentations for next time. So if you've got any comments, I would love to hear from you. And I think I answered everything in the chat. If you have a question, you can always get in touch with me, phone, email, whichever works for you. We're a month out, so please go ahead and start if you haven't, because anything can happen. We saw that with the pandemic. Stuff happens and the deadline comes and you're not quite there. So please don't wait till the last minute. Be in touch if you need anything. Would I be willing to repeat the ILL info again? So let me see if I can hop over to the spreadsheet. And let's see. So maybe, Liz, you could type me in some info about what part you would like clarified while I scroll up to that section, which is 4.50 and 4.51. Yeah, so if I answered all your questions, thank you, everybody. So this is interlibrary loans. So interlibrary means between libraries. So if, for instance, a library gets in touch with their library and says, our patron has requested this book, we see you have it, can you send it to us? That's going to be an interlibrary loan between the two libraries. So that counts as an ILL transaction. And in consortia where patrons are allowed to place their own holds, that's addressed right here. You should include those patron placed holds for the purposes of this report as an interlibrary loan versus borrow it. So remember, there's a whole nother webinar last week about borrow it and what that means. That's a loan to an individual. So including the bibliomation request. So if bibliomation is a consortium, and if bibliomation allows various patrons to place requests, then yes, you would include those patron placed holds as an interlibrary loan transaction for the purposes of this annual report. And there's a little bit more info here about an ILL. So that goes in there. Another question in the chat, where do OCLC requests go? I did remove the two questions about whether your library borrows or loans materials out of state because people didn't really use that material. So if you borrowed material directly from another library, that'll go in 4.50. If you loaned material directly to another library, that'll go in 4.51. And in this case, doesn't matter if it was in Connecticut or outside of Connecticut. At this point, they all go into those two questions. So hopefully that addresses it. Okay. Thank you guys for being here. My contact info one more time. Awesomeness. I'm going to stop our recording and I hope to see you again sometime soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.